Imagine that one night you look up at the sky and notice that the stars form a peculiar shape. Perhaps it seems as if the outlines of a woman are sketched in the infinite darkness, her arms spread wide as if embracing the entire universe. This is not a product of modern imagination, but an ancient vision that has occupied humanity for more than 5,000 years. This figure is Isis, whom the ancient Egyptians revered as the mother of the universe, the mistress of magic, and the embodiment of infinite love. But who was this mysterious goddess really, and why is her role so important even today in the 21st century? In ancient Egyptian culture, Isis was not simply one deity among many. She was the central figure around which the entire spiritual worldview revolved. While other goddesses specialized in certain areas, Isis was present in all aspects of life and death, birth and rebirth, the earthly and the celestial worlds. The roots of Isis's story disappear into the mists of time. Archaeologists and Egyptologists believe that by the time of the 5th dynasty, approximately 4,500 years ago, her cult was fully developed. But many signs suggest that her origin may be even older, perhaps reaching back to pre-dynastic times, when Egypt was not yet a unified empire. Ernest Alfred Wallace Budge, former curator of the Egyptian department at the British Museum, wrote, "The figure of Isis carries within herself the ancient wisdom of all feminine power. She is not just a goddess, but divinity itself, the original source from which all other feminine aspects derive." The Egyptians believed that Isis was the first to teach humanity the arts of civilization. According to legends, Isis was the daughter of Geb, the god of earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. Her brother and husband was Osiris, the god of fertility and rebirth, with whom she lived one of the most defining love stories in ancient mythology. This relationship was not merely a romantic tale, but a deep spiritual symbol representing the union of opposites, the transcendence of duality. But perhaps the most important part of Isis's story is not the period of happiness, but what followed. When Set, the god of chaos, killed Osiris and tore his body into 14 pieces, which he scattered throughout Egypt, Isis did not give up. This moment defined her true power and spiritual greatness. Isis's wandering, during which she collected the pieces of her husband's body, was not just a physical journey. This was the first documented spiritual seeker's path in human history. Each piece found was a step toward wholeness, a lesson about the nature of life and death, an initiation into the deepest mysteries of existence. Plutarch, the Greek historian and priest who lived at the turn of the 1st and 2nd centuries, described the cult of Isis in detail. He himself was initiated into the mysteries of Isis, and in his work he noted, "The myth of Isis is not a simple story, but an encoded teaching about how the soul can find itself after fragmentation. Just as Isis collected the body of Osiris, so must we collect the scattered pieces of ourselves. When Isis found all the pieces except one, she revived Osiris with her magic. This was not merely physical resurrection, but the first alchemical transformation. Osiris did not return in the same form, but was transformed, elevated, and became the ruler of the underworld. This story is the first detailed description of life after death in human culture. But Isis's role goes even further. After she revived Osiris, she created life from him. She carried their son Horus in her womb for 10 months, then gave birth to him alone and raised him while they had to flee from Set's wrath. This is the archetypal single mother, which later appeared in countless cultures. Modern psychology calls this archetype the mother complex. But this term captures nothing of Isis's true power. Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, recognized that Isis is more than an archaeological curiosity. She is a universal symbol that lives in the deepest layers of the collective unconscious. Jung wrote, "The image of the mother goddess, embodied by Isis, is not simply the projection of biological motherhood. It is the creative principle itself, that which gives life, nourishes, protects, and ultimately transforms. Every culture creates its own version, but the essence remains the same." The magic of Isis was considered the most fearsome power of the ancient world. Legends tell that she knew the secret name even of Ra, the sun god, which no other being knew. This knowledge was not mere information, but possession of the power of creation. Whoever knew the true name of a being could exercise power over it. This teaching on a deeper level suggests that Isis knew the codes of creation. She knew how manifestation works, how energy can be transformed into matter, how to heal the body and the soul. Her priestesses, called the servants of Isis, learned these secret knowledges for generations. Most of ancient Egyptian medicine can be traced back to the teachings of Isis. Knowledge of medicinal herbs, treatment of wounds, healing prayers and rituals all came from her wisdom. But Isis's healing went beyond the physical body. She also healed the wounds of the soul. When someone experienced pain, loss, grief, or hopelessness, they turned to Isis. In the temples, there were special rooms where purification ceremonies were performed. These were not simple baths, but ritual spaces where people could wash away the burden of the past. Modern trauma research is beginning to understand what the ancient Egyptians knew 5,000 years ago. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the leading researchers of traumatization, wrote, "Trauma is not just in the mind, but in every cell of the body. For healing, something ritual, symbolic, and communal is needed, not just therapy." In the Temple of Isis, the rituals provided exactly this. Purification, prayers, community support, symbolic acts, all were instruments of healing. And at the center always stood Isis, as the force capable of transforming pain. The winged form of Isis is perhaps one of the most recognizable symbols in Egyptian art. She was often depicted with enormous wings spread wide, protecting the dying or those being reborn. These wings were not just decorative elements, but protective forces under which there is safety in transition. The motif of winged Isis later appeared in other cultures as well. The wings of angels in Christian art, the wings of protective spirits in Eastern traditions, all can be traced back to this ancient image. Humanity has always needed the belief that something provides protection in vulnerable moments. The cult of Isis was particularly strong in the rituals surrounding childbirth. Women, when in labor, called out the name of Isis for help. They wore amulets with her image, which promised protection and easier birth. Midwives were all priestesses of Isis, who knew the secrets of birth. But Isis was not only present at physical birth, she was there at every rebirth. When someone entered a new life phase, when career or relationship changed, when someone stepped out of their old self and put on a new identity, the energy of Isis helped in the transition. Elizabeth Lesser, researcher of spiritual development, wrote, "Transition is always a kind of death and rebirth. We must die to who we were in order to be born to who we can be. This requires protection, support, and a certain knowledge that at the end of the transition, something more beautiful awaits us." The mysteries of Isis formed the most famous spiritual schools of the ancient world. In Greece, in Rome. Even in Britain, there were temples built in her honor. In these temples, those who wanted to reach higher levels of consciousness went through an initiation process lasting years. Apuleius, a Roman writer who lived in the 2nd century, described his own initiation into the mysteries of Isis in his work, The Golden Ass. Although he could not reveal the details of the ceremonies, even what he could say was enchanting. I died and was reborn. I saw the sun shining at midnight. I approached the gods of the underworld and the gods of the heavens and bowed before both. During initiation, the adepts experienced the wandering of Isis. They symbolically participated in the death, resurrection, and glorification of Osiris. Through this, they understood the nature of their own life, death, and rebirth. They did not learn this from the outside, but from within, through direct experience. If you want to dive deeper into spiritual teachings, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss any new videos. Now let's return to the unique power and wisdom of Isis. Isis was also present in the stars. The ancient Egyptians considered Sopdet, the goddess of the star Sirius, to be one of the manifestations of Isis. When Sirius reappeared in the sky before the flooding of the Nile, this was considered the return of Isis. This event was not merely an astronomical observation, but a spiritual celebration. The heliacal rising of Sirius, when the star first became visible in the morning sky after the summer solstice, marked the beginning of the Egyptian New Year. The tears of Isis, as the legends say, filled the Nile and made the lands fertile. This symbolism connects the celestial and earthly worlds, showing that everything is interconnected. Modern astrophysics has made interesting discoveries about Sirius. It is a binary star system that has both a visible and an invisible component. Perhaps the ancient Egyptians intuitively perceived this duality, which was so characteristic of Isis's nature as well: visible and invisible, earthly and celestial, matter and spirit simultaneously. Isis's relationship with the moon also carries deep symbolic meaning. The moon, which grows full over 14 days and then wanes over 14 days, reflects the 14 pieces of Osiris's body. The energy of Isis is thus closely connected to the lunar cycles, to feminine cycles, to the movement of tides, to every rhythm that signals the pulsation of life. Women have known for millennia that lunar cycles affect them. Menstruation, fertility, moods, all are connected to the phases of the moon. The ancient priestesses who served in the temple of Isis knew these rhythms precisely and worked in harmony with them. Miranda Gray, researcher of modern feminine spirituality, writes, "The moon is woman, and we women are children of the moon. Our cycles are in harmony with it. If we learn to follow these rhythms, not fighting against them but flowing with them, we find the source of our inner strength." According to the teachings of Isis, feminine power is not of constant intensity. There is a time when we must turn inward, rest, regenerate. And there is a time when we can turn outward, act, create. The ancient priestesses knew these phases and timed their rituals accordingly. At the time of the new moon, when the world is dark, the energy of Isis helps with the inner journey. This is the time of reflection, mourning, letting go. With the waxing moon grows the energy of action. At the time of the full moon, when everything is manifest and clear, this is the time of manifestation and celebration. With the waning moon comes purification and preparation for another cycle. This cyclical approach to life is in complete contrast to the linear conception of the modern world. Today, we are expected to always deliver the same performance. to be constantly productive, never to slow down. Nature rebels against this, and this causes burnout, depression, physical illnesses. The wisdom of Isis would return us to natural rhythms, to the healthy alternation of growth and rest, activity and reflection, openness and withdrawal. This is not weakness, but strength. Not inefficiency, but sustainability. In the ancient temples, the priestesses not only performed religious ceremonies, but also healed. The Temple of Isis was also a healing center, where any suffering could turn for help. Physical illnesses were treated with herbal remedies, rituals, and prayers, but they took soul wounds just as seriously. Modern medicine is now beginning to rediscover what ancient healers already knew. The body and soul cannot be separated. Every physical illness has a psychological component, and every psychological suffering has a physical manifestation. The priestesses of Isis approached healing holistically. Candace Pert, who researched the biochemistry of emotions, discovered that neurotransmitters, which convey our feelings, are present throughout the body, not just in the brain. She wrote, "Our bodies feel emotions at the molecular level. There is no difference between mind and body. Every cell thinks, feels, and remembers." According to the teachings of Isis, the key to healing is love. Not the type of medicine, not the technique, but the purity and love of the healer's intention determines the outcome. When someone touches a patient with love, when they surround them with their prayers, when they direct their intention toward healing, then true healing can occur. This does not mean that physical medicine is unnecessary. On the contrary, the ancient Egyptians had very advanced medical knowledge. But they knew that alongside medicine, spiritual support is also needed. The two approaches together are much more effective than either one separately. One of the most touching parts of the legend of Isis is when she hides with her son Horus in the reeds of the Nile Delta. She, who was one of the most powerful goddesses of all Egypt, as a single mother, fought out for her child's life. This human dimension makes Isis so relatable. Every mother who raised her child alone, every woman who had to be strong in difficult circumstances, every person who protected those they love, can recognize themselves in Isis's story. She is not a distant, incredible goddess, but one who experienced human pain. When Horus was stung by a scorpion and the child hovered between life and death, Isis begged the gods for help. This moment shows the human face of the goddess. Although she possessed enormous power, as a mother she was just as vulnerable as anyone else. Love makes us vulnerable. Ra, the sun god, finally heard Isis's plea and healed Horus. This story is evidence of the ancient knowledge that children's illnesses are the greatest trials for parents. And that prayer, pleading, asking for help, is not weakness, but strength. Many modern researchers note that the iconography of Isis and Horus is strikingly similar to later Christian depictions of Mary and the infant Jesus. This is not coincidental. The first Christians lived in Egypt, and it was natural that the new religion adapted the ancient symbols. Marion Woodman, Jungian analyst, wrote, "Archetypes are eternal. They may dress in new clothes, wear different names, but their essence remains unchanged. The image of the Divine Mother and the miracle child appears in every culture because it dwells in the depths of the human soul." In the Temple of Isis, the initiates learned that every woman carries within herself the energy of Isis. One does not need to be born a goddess to access this power. In every woman is the capacity to create, the power to heal, the protective instinct, and the ability to transform. But the teachings of Isis are not only for women. Men can also learn from her. In every person, there is masculine and feminine energy, animus and anima, as Jung called it. The whole person is one who integrates both sides within themselves, who is not afraid of either their strength or their tenderness. In a balanced society, the wisdom of Isis would be just as important as, for example, the teachings of Osiris or Horus. But throughout history, especially in the last 2,000 years, goddess cults have receded into the background. The consequence is today's imbalance in the world. Excessive masculine energy, which values only conquest, dominance, competition, and linear thinking, has caused destruction. The exploitation of nature, wars, the mechanization of human relationships, all are consequences of this disturbed balance. Jean Shinoda Bolin, psychiatrist and researcher of feminine psychology, writes, "The absence of goddesses from our society has caused not only a spiritual vacuum, but also practical problems. When we lose respect for the feminine principle, we lose our connection with nature, with each other, and with ourselves." The return of Isis's energy to the collective consciousness is perhaps the most important task we face. This does not mean that we should build temples again or revive ancient rituals. It means that we must again honor the values that Isis represents. The value of caring, for example. While the modern world puts productivity and performance in the foreground, according to the teaching of Isis, the greatest power lies in caring. Caring for others, caring for the earth, caring for ourselves. This is not passive activity, but active creation. When we nourish someone, whether in food, words, or attention, we channel the energy of Isis. When we heal, when we provide protection, when we create space for others' growth, then her wisdom works through us. The ability to transform is also Isis's legacy. She is the master of alchemy, who transforms death into life, pain into strength, fragmentation into unity. In every life situation lies the possibility of transformation if we are open to the teaching of Isis. Thomas More, psychologist and theologian, writes, "The alchemy of the soul is not about avoiding darkness, but about passing through it and transforming it. Suffering, when consciously experienced, can produce gold. This is the real secret of alchemy." Isis herself went through this alchemy. Grief and loss did not break her, but made her stronger. Solitude did not weaken her, but taught her independence. The responsibility she bore for her son did not weigh her down, but lifted her up. Every difficulty we face is an opportunity for transformation. The transition of divorce can be toward deeper self-knowledge. The transition of unemployment can be toward finding a new career path. The transition of illness can be toward a healthier lifestyle. Justice always lies in what we do with what happens to us. The message of Isis is hope. No matter how dark the situation seems, no matter how fragmented we feel, there is always the possibility of reconstruction. The protective wing is always above us, even if we don't see it. The inner strength is always there, even if we don't feel it. The ancient initiates taught that the magic of Isis is within all of us. One does not need to be born with special abilities to access it. One only needs to be open, accepting, and willing to learn from experiences. The practical steps are simple. First, recognize and honor our own cyclical nature. Don't fight against our natural rhythms, but learn to flow with them. There are times for action and times for rest. Second, practice caring. Start with ourselves, then extend it to others and the world. Caring is not a burden, but a gift. And as we give, we also receive. Third, don't be afraid of transformation. When life brings change, don't cling convulsively to the old. Let it go and trust that something better is coming. Isis is always there in moments of transition. Fourth, reconnect with nature. The phases of the moon, the changing of seasons, the rhythms of plants and animals. These all reflect the energy of Isis. The closer we are to nature, the closer we are to her. Fifth, discover our own magic. We don't need to think of esoteric rituals. Magic is when we live with intention, when we consciously create, when we believe we can influence our reality. Isis taught that the greatest magic is faith and love. The ancient Egyptians believed that Isis is especially with those who suffer. When someone grieves, when someone is sick, when someone is lost, when someone is alone, the wings of Isis lean particularly close. Perhaps this is why so many millions have felt a connection with her over millennia. Robert Masters and Jean Houston, researchers of human potential, wrote, "Those archetypes survive in culture that respond to real human needs." Isis has remained with us because we need what she represents. The strong, tender, wise feminine energy that heals and protects. If we think through the story of Isis, it actually covers the entire spectrum of human experience. Love and loss, joy and pain, strength and vulnerability, hope and despair, perseverance and surrender. She went through all of this and learned from all of it. This makes Isis such a relevant figure even today. Not a distant, unattainable goddess, but one who knows the human condition, who knows what it means to love and lose, who knows what it means to struggle alone, who knows what it means to rebuild what has fallen apart. When the modern world tells us we must always be strong, Isis teaches that it's okay to cry. When they say we must stand alone, Isis shows that we can ask for help. When they say forget the past, Isis teaches that we should integrate it. The cult of Isis survived the fall of ancient Egypt. When the Roman Empire expanded, temples of Isis were built in Rome, Athens, Londinium, all the way to the edges of the empire. The Egyptian goddess became universal because her message was universal. Even after the rise of Christianity, for centuries they preserved the cult of Isis in secret. The alchemists, the Hermetic philosophers, the mystics all considered themselves disciples of Isis. Her wisdom filtered into medieval magic, Renaissance philosophy, the art of Romanticism. To this day, when we see a Black Madonna in a European cathedral, when we find the image of an enthroned mother goddess in a museum, when we read about the Queen of the Starry Night in a fairy tale, we see the legacy of Isis. She is in every symbol of feminine power, in every protective gesture, in every healing touch. Modern feminism could learn much from Isis. It is not about women having to become like men to gain recognition. The power of Isis did not lie in being masculine, but precisely in being fully feminine. Her power came from feminine nature, not from its denial. Caring is not weakness, but strength. Sensitivity is not a flaw, but a gift. Intuition is not unreliable, but wise. Cyclicality is not a problem, but natural. Connection is not dependency, but health. According to the teaching of Isis, feminine nature is just as valuable and strong as masculine, just different. But Isis is not only for women. Every man also carries within himself feminine energy. which society often suppresses. Men also need to connect with their tenderness, sensitivity, caring nature. The model of Isis shows a path to this as well. The whole person is one who integrates both energies within themselves, who can be strong and tender, who can set boundaries and yet remain open, who can act and yet receive, who can protect and yet let go. This is the true goal of alchemy, the marriage of opposites. The story of Isis and Osiris symbolizes precisely this. It is not just about the love of two deities, but about the union of the masculine and feminine principles. When Isis revived Osiris, this union created Horus, the symbol of new consciousness. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey through the realm of Isis. If you found this video valuable, please share it with those who might also need this ancient wisdom. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell, and write in the comments what resonated most with you from Isis's story, or how feminine energy manifests in your own life. In the following videos, we will discover more ancient wisdoms, teachings that help us understand ourselves and the world around us. Meanwhile, remember, you too carry within you the power of Isis. You may not yet be fully aware of it, but it is there, waiting for you to discover and activate it. And when you encounter life's difficulties, remember the story of Isis. She too went through the impossible and yet triumphed. You are capable of it too.